morning of December 30th, 2006, the Iraqi government executed Saddam Hussein. It was the morning of Eid, and the culmination of a trial heavily managed by the same superpower that once backed his rise. This raises a very difficult question. Why did the United States spend decades building up a regional strongman, only to invest even more effort into his public destruction? The Ottoman Empire collapsed after World War I, leaving a massive power vacuum in the Middle East. British and Western diplomats filled it by drawing arbitrary borders, creating nations like Iraq where none had existed before. These new borders forced together diverse groups with little shared history. This fragility made the region susceptible to foreign influence, as the new nation lacked the internal stability to resist external manipulation. Iraq was less a stable state and more a collection of geopolitical pieces waiting for a Western-backed leader to enforce order through sheer force. By 1979, Western interests faced a crisis. The Iranian Revolution, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, threatened to spread a new ideological movement across the world's most critical oil reserves. The CIA's solution was to support an ambitious Ba'ath Party official named Saddam Hussein. Washington viewed him as a useful tool to contain Iran and secure the region's energy flow. In 1980, Saddam proved his utility by launching a massive invasion of Iran. This 8-year proxy war was heavily subsidized by Arab neighbors and fueled by American intelligence and weaponry. By the time a bitter ceasefire was finally signed in 1988, Iraq possessed one of the world's largest militaries. However, the country was also financially exhausted, owing over $80 billion to the very neighbors it claimed to be protecting. Saddam had bled Iran for his Western backers, but in doing so, he transformed Iraq into a heavily armed nation on the brink of bankruptcy. Faced with a stagnant economy, Saddam demanded that Kuwait forgive the multi-billion-dollar war debt. When Kuwait refused, tensions over the shared border reached a breaking point. Tensions escalated when Iraq accused Kuwait of slant drilling, using advanced technology to siphon oil from Iraqi fields right across the border. Seeking clarity, Saddam met with U.S. diplomats. Washington signaled that it had no special defense or security commitments to Kuwait, a message Saddam interpreted as a green light for military action. Convinced of his own importance to Western strategy, Saddam launched a surprise invasion of Kuwait in August 1990. He expected his allies to look the other way. Saddam interpreted American silence as continued support for his role as a regional enforcer. He moved into Kuwait oblivious to the fact that his utility as an asset had expired, and a far larger international response was already being prepared. The U.S. response was immediate. Operation Desert Storm deployed a massive international coalition to Saudi Arabia to protect global oil and liberate Kuwait. In just 6 weeks, the Iraqi military was decimated. As they retreated, Saddam's forces used brutal scorched earth tactics, setting hundreds of oil wells ablaze and creating an environmental catastrophe. Despite the total defeat, the coalition halted its advance before reaching Baghdad. The U.S. chose to leave a weakened Saddam in power, viewing him as a necessary, albeit defanged, buffer against Iran. Instead of regime change, the West applied a decade of crippling economic sanctions. These measures effectively froze the Iraqi economy, preventing the nation from rebuilding while ensuring it remained isolated. In a desperate attempt to save his air force from coalition bombers, Saddam hid 140 of his most advanced jets in Iran. Predictably, Tehran refused to return them, keeping the planes as war reparations. This decade of containment successfully neutralized Saddam as a regional player. It gave Western powers nearly total leverage over the region's energy exports, without the cost of a full occupation. By 2003, the geopolitical landscape had shifted. After an economic slump and the 9/11 attacks, the Bush administration looked toward Iraq with a new, more aggressive strategy. To justify a full-scale invasion, officials claimed Saddam possessed weapons of mass destruction. While UN inspectors found no evidence of these weapons, the narrative served as the primary rationale for preemptive war. The invasion was swift. By April 2003, U.S. Marines were in the heart of Baghdad, watching as the iconic statue of Saddam Hussein was toppled, signaling the collapse of the state. Saddam was eventually captured in a small underground hideout. He was tried by a local court under U.S. supervision and executed, a final act timed to maximize domestic political impact and regional humiliation. The asset's life cycle was complete. He had moved from a funded ally in the 80s to a contained threat in the 90s, and finally, a disposable scapegoat for a long-term military presence. The subsequent occupation was marked by systemic human rights abuses. Images from prisons like Abu Ghraib provided raw evidence of a military presence that had transitioned from liberation to brutal control. With the state dismantled, the economic extraction began. Control of oil infrastructure was handed to foreign firms, national gold reserves were relocated, and Iraq was forced into total reliance on the US dollar. The destruction of the Iraqi state left a massive security vacuum. The disenfranchised population and the absence of a central government directly facilitated the rise of violent extremist groups like ISIS. While the Middle East spiraled into chaos, the superpowers remained insulated. Their geography and naval dominance ensured that the violence they helped trigger stayed localized, thousands of miles from their own shores. This chaos creates its own market. Regional fear drives Middle Eastern nations to spend billions on advanced weaponry and protection from the Western nations that dismantled the region's stability in the first place. Iraq's collapse created a self-sustaining cycle where localized terror sustains a permanent market for protection. In this ecosystem, the dismantling of a state serves as a catalyst for billions in security contracts and hardware sales, effectively monetizing regional instability.